Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad, Yahweh Echad. Hear, O Israel, all you chosen ones, the Adon Elohim, the Adon is one. Blessed be your name, for his kingdom come, the Adon Elohim, the Adon is one. Majesty too great to dwell in temples made of stone. You have chosen hearts of flesh to make your glory known, and let your kingdom come, and let your will be done. Ruach of heaven, blow, make your presence known, and like an ocean wide, let your glory rise, cover all the earth. Hear, O Israel, my Elohim is one. Hear, O Israel, hear you chosen ones, the Adon Elohim, the Adon is one. Faithful Father, Ruach of the Adon, Mashiach Son, the Elohim is one. Majesty too great to dwell in temples made of stone. You have chosen hearts of flesh to make I call your name, and I speak your name. You'll hear my voice in the morning. My heart is still, my mind at ease, and my soul at peace in your presence. And so fill me now, for we are one, and we shall be eternally. So fill me now, for we are one, and we shall be eternally. And I call your name, yes I do, I call your name. I speak your name, Yahweh. You'll hear my voice in the morning. My heart is still, my mind is at ease, my soul at peace in your presence. You rule the oceans and the seas, subdue the storm-tossed waves for me. Yeah, you are awesome. All of heaven declares your name, your wondrous beauty, your majesty. Yeah, you are awesome. And who can compare? Who can compare to your great love? None can compare, none can compare to all you've done. El Elyon, you're the name above all names. El Shaddai, my heart
Shalom, brothers and sisters, fellow called out believers. Welcome to the Greater Exodus, the End Times teaching. This evening we're looking at doing part 19 or episode 19, and we've come a long way with this teaching. So tonight I'm going to go over quite a bit of it because it's been a while. So part 19 of the teaching on the principles of the Greater Exodus. In parts 1 through to 9, we looked in detail regarding the principles and patterns that we needed to understand to give us the proper foundation to understand how the Greater Exodus is going to come about. And then we looked at the events that are associated with triggering the Greater Exodus. Hence, we saw that the nations would divide the land of Israel. That's the nations of the world. Would divide the land of Israel and the city of Jerusalem through the recognition and creation of a Palestinian state based upon 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as its capital, resulting in the judgment of the nations for dividing the land of Israel and the city of Jerusalem. Now this judgment is upon an end-time spiritual land as well. And that land is called the daughter of Babylon. And it's mentioned in the book of Isaiah chapter 13 and Isaiah chapter 21 and in Isaiah chapter 47 and the book of Jeremiah chapter 50 and chapter 51 and the book of Revelation and chapter 18. Now the daughter of Babylon has the characteristics of the historical, literal Babylon of old under King Nebuchadnezzar, but is instead an end-time nation, which I believe, this is just me, do not quote me, I cannot prove this, just my theory, but I believe is the United States of America. Elohim judged Pharaoh and Egypt with 10 plagues. The nations of the world will be judged for dividing Israel and the city of Jerusalem. It is a dangerous game to play with Elohim's chosen people. Now the Elohim of Israel will end the exile of his people. That's the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom being the 10 tribes led by Ephraim, or the house of Joseph. The southern kingdom, the house of Judah. The prophecy about the northern and the southern kingdom becoming one is found in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 37 and verses 15 to 28. So the children of Israel were redeemed from Egypt through judgment that came on Pharaoh and the nation of Egypt. The greater exodus will come about while judgment is on the nations of the world for dividing Israel and the city of Jerusalem. These judgments are associated with the tribulation period, even the Great Tribulation. The Great Tribulation being the 3.5 years that precedes Yeshua setting his feet down on the Mount of Olives. And so just as the children of Israel came out of Passover from Egypt, the greater exodus will begin at a future Passover that starts the Great Tribulation. Now the tribulation is called Jacob's trouble. It is associated with birth pains, like a woman giving birth to a child. So then, we will have, during the tribulation period, as is mentioned in Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 8, we will have the birth of the biblical state of Zion. So, this is Zion coming about where we can see it in the natural. And biblical Zion is a nation born in one day during a time of travail, the tribulation period. Isaiah chapter 66 and verses 8 to 9 are linked with the book of Revelation in chapter 12. And we see that a woman who was crowned, and that means she has authority, she was crowned with 12 stars, and that's the 12 tribes of Israel united together, is a prophecy of Israel ruling over the nations, which will come about when Messiah comes to end their exile. He sets up his kingdom and he teaches the Torah from Jerusalem to all the nations of the world. The greater Exodus ends up being the resolution or the climax of the conflict which has been going on for centuries between Jacob and Esau. It is through Jacob that the Elohim of Israel promised the birthright and the kingship. So Joseph within Jacob was given the birthright, and Judah within Jacob was given the kingship. And even though Esau sold his birthright to Jacob in the book of Genesis in chapter 25, he still wants to have the power and the ruler and the role of it all. He doesn't want to serve Elohim of Israel, nor does he advocate the following of the Torah of the Elohim of Israel. He wants nothing to do with any of that. Now, in the book of Joel in chapter 3, and we'll look at verse 1. It says, "For look, open your eyes, take notice. In those days, at that time, when I turned back the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem," in other words, the days of the ceasing of the exile, the days of the start of the Great Tribulation, when Elohim turns back the captivity or the exile of Judah and Jerusalem. "Then I shall gather all the Gentiles," verse 2, "and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. And I shall enter into judgment with them there. For my people, my inheritance Israel, whom they have scattered among the Gentiles, and they have divided up my land." So the first sign that we're looking at as to when all this is going to happen is when the nations of the world want to establish a Palestinian state based upon the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as their capital, where the primary area that would encompass the state is the West Bank, or biblically It's the mountains of Israel, or Judah and Samaria. Now, that is very important. Do not forget that. Because the nations of the world, along with Esau, who is now represented by the Palestinians, are spiritually trying to claim that birthright back. And they say it belongs to them. Because most of the land area that was given to the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh encompasses what we now call the West Bank. And so the nations wanting to have control and power over Jerusalem, they are in essence trying to usurp the kingship that was given to Judah. And since Yeshua is from the tribe of Judah, ultimately the kingship in this world and the kingship of the universe belongs to him. So ultimately, the greater Exodus is the resolution of the conflict between Jacob and Esau. In other words, when you see the greater Exodus start to occur, you will know the battle between Jacob and Esau is finished. So, when we're looking at the signs by which we can determine when these things are going to happen in our world, I've already specified to you the sign that the nations dividing the land of Israel and the city of Jerusalem and establishing and recognising a Palestinian state, that's going to be a trigger event that will ultimately culminate at the end of the exile of the 12 tribes of Israel, uniting the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom and starting the greater Exodus. So the second sign then is the birth of biblical Zion. And if you turn to the book of Isaiah in chapter 66, and go to verse 8. You've heard me, I've quoted this verse many times. Isaiah 66 and verse 8 says, "Who has heard the like of this? Who has seen the like of these? Is a land brought forth in one day? Is a nation born at once? For as soon as Zion laboured, she gave birth to her children." I'm telling you, remember that verse. Very important. That is when the governors of Judah that are mentioned in the book of Zechariah, chapter 12 and verses 5 to 6, rise up against the system in non-acceptance by the nations trying to recognise a Palestinian state. The governors of Judah say no. They want to claim hold to the covenant that was made with Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, that they will declare an independent state themselves in the West Bank or Judea, Samaria, of which the Bible names in Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 8 as Zion. Now I told you to remember that verse because these things are coming out of it. They were named Zion. This is an event that is associated with the start of the Great Tribulation. As we can see in the book of Revelation and chapter 12. Because listen closely, because once the woman in Revelation 12 gives birth, she's giving birth to biblical Zion. She's giving birth to the Messiah. And so the Messiah and biblical Zion become one. A card, one. And there's going to be opposition to this very thing happening from the nations of the world. And once we have the birth of biblical Zion, it inaugurates Messiah revealing himself to his people and then revealing himself to the world. And as soon as we have the birth of biblical Zion of Revelation chapter 12, we have the greater Exodus. The period of the time of the greater Exodus is 3.5 years long, or 1,260 days, as the fleeing into the wilderness in Revelation chapter 12 is the greater Exodus. So the time in which the greater Exodus is going to happen is during the Great Tribulation. It will begin at a Passover that starts the Great Tribulation. The duration of the greater Exodus then will be 3.5 years in the wilderness of the peoples. So the third sign that is associated with the end of the exile and the greater Exodus is the defeat of Gog and Magog. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38 and 39, because once the armies of Gog and Magog are defeated, we have stated in Ezekiel chapter 39 verse 25, so if you want to go there, I want you to read this with me, chapter 39 of Ezekiel and verse 25. It says, therefore, thus said the Adon Yahweh, now I am going to bring back the captives of Jacob. He says now he's going to stop the exile. And then he goes on and he says, and I shall have compassion on all the house of Israel. That's the northern and southern kingdom. He says that he's going to end Jacob's captivity in exile once we have the defeat of Gog and Magog. So those are your three signs that you're looking for that triggers the greater Exodus. Number one is the dividing of the land of Israel and Jerusalem to form a Palestinian state. Number two sign is the birth of biblical Zion, declared by the governors of Judah. That is the declaration of an independent state based upon the covenant that was made with Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, in a declaration that that state will follow the Torah of the Elohim of Israel. And number three is the defeat of Gog Magog by the Adon Yahweh. So these are some of the things that we've covered in previous sessions. If you want to go back and watch the teachings, you will learn these in more depth. I suggest you do that, because that's why we put it down on video, so that you can learn and get a hold of it. When somebody asks you what's going on, you can tell them, because you know. So we are going to now look at the Messiah who gathers and unites the 12 tribes of Israel. Then we're going to see that the gathering and uniting of the 12 tribes of Israel is for the intent and purpose of sanctifying his name. Because as long as his people are in exile, shame comes upon his people. Now the name of the Elohim of Israel is profaned among all the nations. Listen, using his name as a curse word. In other words, they don't revere him. They do not fear him. They don't give him esteem. And they don't seek to follow him. So then, what we're going to see is that the way in which the Messiah gathers and unites the 12 tribes of Israel is how he brought the children of Israel out of Egypt, which is by the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. That is how he brought them out of Egypt. So these are some of the things that we're going to be sharing in greater detail with you this evening. As we continue this teaching, so to begin with, we need to understand that it is the role and the task and the function of the Messiah to gather and unite the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, we're going to go to the book of John. And here where we're going to look at, Yeshua is having a conversation with the Pharisees. In the book of John in chapter 9, he is having a conversation with these fellas. Now at the end of John chapter 9, they ask Yeshua a question. So the question is found in verse 40 of John chapter 9. And they asked Yeshua, this is after he'd been talking to them and pointed out to them where their failings were coming. They said to him, "Are we blind too?" The Pharisees, the leaders of Israel at the time. So in John chapter 10, you will find Yeshua's answer to that question. At least the first part of the chapter is where we will find the answer. So in answering the question, are we blind, Yeshua says, but first I want to add a bit. You must understand that the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the scribes and all those fellas, they were the shepherds of Israel. That was what they were known as, the shepherds of Israel. And Yeshua's just been talking to them, pointing out their problems. And they said to him, "Are we blind too?" The questions asked by the shepherds of Israel. So in the book of John and chapter 10, and we'll turn to verse 11. Yeshua speaking, and he says, "I am the good shepherd." Boy, did he answer them. They're the shepherds of Israel, and he told them they were wrong, they were doing it wrong, everything was wrong. So they said, "Are we blind also?" And he said to them, he said, "I am the good shepherd, not you." Now when Yeshua is referring to the good shepherd, he is making a declaration by reference that he is the Messiah, that he is going to gather and unite the 12 tribes of Israel. He made that statement not in that many words, because these guys knew if he was the Messiah, they knew that's what he had to do. Turn with me to the book of Jeremiah chapter 31. Keep your finger or whatever you want in John chapter 10. Jeremiah chapter 31. And by the way, those that have listened to Wednesday night's teaching, how many of you got a lot of revelation out of that? Because let me tell you, I did. And I have been rejoicing in it ever since. Okay, are you there? Jeremiah chapter 31 and verse 10. It says, "Hear the word of Yahweh, O Gentiles, and declare it in the isles afar off, and say," you ready? "He who scattered Israel gathers him, and shall guard him as a shepherd his flock." That was his answer, and is found in Jeremiah 31. And so the gathering of the exiles of Israel is likened unto the good shepherd gathering his sheep. So this says that the good shepherd that gathers is also the one that scattered the flock. It's interesting, isn't it? Well, the one that scattered did so because when he gave the Torah at Mount Sinai, they broke the covenant. As a result of breaking the covenant, they were exiled out into the nations of the world. So when Yeshua says he's a good shepherd, and we make a link up to Jeremiah chapter 31 and verse 10, and see that the good shepherd is also the one that scattered his people, we can see in this that Yeshua gave the Torah at Mount Sinai, because it was the good shepherd at Mount Sinai that scattered them, and Yeshua saying that's him. So he had to be the one at Mount Sinai. Then we can also look at the role of the good shepherd if we go to the book of Ezekiel and chapter 34. Ezekiel chapter 34 verse 11, and we'll continue on through 12. Verse 11 says, "For thus said the Adon Yahweh, see, I myself shall search for my sheep and seek them out." That's what a good shepherd does. And he's going to search for his sheep throughout the world, and he's going to seek them out. And verse 12, the last part of it, "So I shall seek out my sheep and deliver them from all the places where they were scattered in a day of cloud and dense cloud." This will all happen in a day of cloud or dense cloud, very dark. So this is going to give you a time reference when we're going to see the gathering and uniting of the 12 tribes of Israel. It's associated with the time in the Bible called the Day of Yahweh, or as the Western translations call it, the Day of the Lord. But I will call it the Day of Yahweh. So the Day of Yahweh goes back to creation, where we see in each day of creation is evening and morning, and then the Creator, that is Yeshua, we have proved that, as he created the heavens and the earth, he said, it is evening and it is morning. Notice the evening is first. So go to the book of John and chapter 1 and verse 3. I mean, probably you should know this. And keep your finger there. And open up to the book of Colossians in chapter 1 and verse 15. And you can follow, but I'm going to just read and ad lib. So Colossians chapter 1 verses 15 to 16 tells us that Yeshua created the heavens and the earth. Correct? That the one that created the heavens and the earth on the seventh day, this is Yeshua, on the seventh day, he rested from his creative work. Well, that seventh day Sabbath of creation is going to be prophetic of a period of time on the earth that the earth itself is going to rest from labouring for 6 days. And each day represents 1,000 years. So the earth has been labouring for 6,000 years. Psalm 90 verse 4 and 2 Peter chapter 3 and verse 8 tells us so. And so the 1,000-year Messianic era is the prophetic Shabbat of creation. And so each day is an evening and the morning. And so the Messianic era begins in the evening. The day of Yahweh begins with darkness and gloominess. Keep listening, we're putting this together. And so this is why Hebraically that the tribulation or the Great Tribulation period is a part of the Messianic era. It's the darkness part of the 1,000 years. It is the darkness part of the day of Yahweh or the day of the Lord. And that darkness ends with the breaking of the day. And the breaking of the darkness is when Yeshua sets his feet down in the Mount of Olives, because his rule and reign on the earth is light. And he's going to be teaching the Torah to all nations. And that's according to Isaiah chapter 2 and verse 3 and Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 23. We are told that the Torah is light. So Yeshua is going to gather and unite the 12 tribes of Israel in the cloudy and dark day. So this is a term for the day of Yahweh. As we can see in the book of Joel and chapter 2, turn there please, Joel chapter 2 and verse 1. It says in Joel chapter 2 and verse 1, blow the shofar in Zion and sound an alarm in my Kodesh or holy mountain, and let all the inhabitants of the earth tremble, for the day of Yahweh is coming, for it is near. And verse 2, just the first part of it, it says, it is going to be a day of darkness and gloom. Are you starting to put it together? The day of Yahweh, the day of the Lord. This is what it's going to be, a day of darkness and gloom. And when Yeshua is going to gather and unite the 12 tribes of Israel from the book of Ezekiel chapter 34 and verse 12, it says there in that verse 12, the last part, it says, in a day of cloud or dense cloud. And in Ezekiel 34 and verse 13, it goes on to say and I will bring them out from the peoples, that's the wilderness of the peoples, and gather them from the lands, and I shall bring them to their own land, and I shall feed them on the mountains of Israel. So somebody has to be removed off the mountains of Israel. Now, the mountains of Israel, Judea, Samaria, or the West Bank, and the mountains of Israel extends all the way to Jerusalem, because mountains surround Jerusalem. So the primary designated place of return for the peoples to return to is Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, as the world calls it today, and Jerusalem. Now, I said the primary designated place, because there's going to be a lot of us at that time. So this happens in the day of Yahweh. And so in the day of Yahweh, we see it described this way. Go back, you got your finger in the book of Joel in chapter 2 and verse 2. We will have the whole scripture. It's a day of darkness and gloominess. That's very negative, isn't it? But the day of Yahweh is also said to be a day of clouds and thick darkness. Have we not read that in all the scriptures? And so the clouds and thick darkness is a reference to Yeshua gathering and uniting the 12 tribes of Israel by the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. Are you putting this together? And the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night is called the esteem of Yahweh. And so in Deuteronomy chapter 5 and verse 22, in describing Mount Sinai in the presence of the one who is there giving the Torah, this is how Mount Sinai is described. Turn with me to Deuteronomy chapter 5 and verse 22. I am running out of time. These words Yahweh spoke to all your assembly in the mountain from the midst of the fire, of the cloud and of the dense cloud, with a loud voice, and he added no more. That's how Mount Sinai was described. Yahweh spoke to all the assembly from the mountain in the midst of the fire, of the cloud and of the dense cloud, with a loud voice, and he added no more. So he spoke out of the cloud. He spoke in thick darkness. So this is the day of Yahweh. This is the day of the Lord. So go back to Joel chapter 2 and verse 2. Joel chapter 2 verse 2, it says, is a day of clouds and thick darkness. That is because when Yeshua brought the children of Israel out of Egypt, now get this right, when Yeshua brought the children of Israel out of Egypt, there was one cloud by day and one pillar of fire by night, by which he led them. Is that correct? But the exiles of Israel are scattered throughout the whole world. And so, when Yeshua gathers them this time, as he gathered the children in Egypt, as he gathers them this time, there's going to be multiple clouds by day and pillars of fire by night. So they have clouds plural and thick darkness plural. So the day of Yahweh is both darkness and gloominess. That's judgment. That's negative. That's because the tribulation, the great tribulation, is a part of the day of Yahweh. But the day of Yahweh is also clouds and thick darkness. That is positive. That is Yeshua gathering his people from exile back to the land in the form of the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. So the day of Yahweh encompasses both of these things. Now I'm going to show you very quickly further how that is during the 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation, is when Yeshua gathers and unites the 12 tribes of Israel. And we can see this in the book of Revelation chapter 7, in the first few verses of the chapter. It describes 144,000 from the 12 tribes of Israel who get sealed. And then a question gets asked in the book of Revelation chapter 7 and verse 13. The question asked is, who are these dressed in white robes? And where did they come from? And this is because after we're told about the sealing of the 144,000, it says in the book of Revelation chapter 7 and verse 9, it says, after this I looked and saw a great crowd, which no one was able to count, out of all nations and tribes and peoples and tongues. And so that a question is asked, who are these? And in Revelation chapter 7, verse 14, that question is answered. And he said to me, listen, and he said to me, these are those coming out of the great tribulation. Not affected by the great tribulation, they are coming out. They're coming out of the darkness. They're coming out of the gloom of the day of Yahweh. Yahweh protected them the same way he protected the children in Israel. It was in the darkness, in the gloom. So we can link these that came out of great tribulation with the ministry of the 144,000. The ministry of the 144,000 is associated with these that came out of great tribulation. The great tribulation is the 3.5 years before Yeshua sets his feet down on the Mount of Olives. And that describing these of every kindred, nations, peoples, of the tongues that came out of the great tribulation, it describes them this way in the book of Revelation chapter 7 and verses 16 and 17. It says, they shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more, neither shall the sun strike them, nor any heat. And verse 17, because the Lamb who is in the midst of the throne shall shepherd and lead them to fountains of waters of life. So, people, this is a description of those that came out in the midst of the great tribulation. Father, thank you for your word again tonight. We covered a lot of territory, going back over all that's been taught over the last 19 lessons, episodes, parts. But Father, thank you that you allowed it to happen. Thank you that you brought about this evening. And your word has been received and the revelation of it has gone forth. And Father, as we now go our way and head off for the rest of this week, bring us back again next Wednesday night for more teaching on the Hebraic principles of Christianity. We give you all the praise, we give you all the esteem, and we do this in the beautiful and wonderful name of Yeshua. Amen. Amen.
פניו אליך ישמך שלום ישמך שלום יברכך יהוה פניו אליך וישמך שלום וישמך שלום. The Adon bless you and keep you. May the Adon shine his face upon you. The Adon bless you and keep you. May the Adon shine his face upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Adon look upon you and give you peace and give you peace. And be gracious unto you. May the Adon look upon you and give you peace and give you peace. פניו אליך ישמך שלום and give you peace. ישמך שלום and give you peace. ישמך שלום